She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't try to sound prophetic. It came the way the most important truths often arrive in our lives, quietly, wrapped in something that looks like simple advice, but carrying the weight of a warning you only understand years later. When Elon Musk's mother spoke about life, ambition, failure, and resilience, she wasn't trying to create a headline. She was speaking as a woman who had seen chaos up close, who had raised children through uncertainty, who had survived years when nothing was guaranteed except responsibility. Her words didn't glitter. They grounded. And that is why they matter. The warning wasn't "don't try." It wasn't "play it safe." It wasn't "be careful or you'll fail." The warning was far more subtle and far more powerful. Don't confuse struggle with being lost, and don't confuse comfort with being safe. Most people miss that distinction. We're taught to avoid discomfort as if it's a sign of danger. We're taught to chase approval as if it's proof we're doing something right. But her message lived in a deeper place, the place where real growth begins. Long before applause shows up, she understood something many people only learn after years of regret. Life doesn't warn you with sirens. It warns you with patterns. And if you don't pay attention, you'll call the warning normal and the advice optional. She spoke about responsibility before passion. That alone feels almost rebellious in a culture obsessed with doing what you love at all costs. But she wasn't dismissing passion, she was anchoring it. She knew that passion without discipline burns out, and ambition without patience collapses under its own weight. Her advice carried an unspoken caution: don't expect the world to understand you while you're building. Understanding comes later, if it comes at all. During the building phase, you must be willing to be misunderstood, underestimated, and occasionally alone. That's a hard truth. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they crave reassurance too early. They need someone to say, "Yes, this will work," before they've done the work that makes it obvious. She warned against that need without ever naming it directly. She modeled a different way of seeing hardship. To her, difficulty wasn't evidence of a wrong path. It was evidence of a real one. Easy paths rarely ask you to become someone new. Hard paths demand transformation, and transformation is never comfortable. There's a quiet strength in that worldview. It doesn't romanticize pain, but it doesn't panic at it either. It treats adversity like weather, something you prepare for, not something you curse endlessly. She also understood the danger of external validation. Praise can be as misleading as criticism. Both can pull you off course if you let them define you. When you're praised, you may stop refining. When you're criticized, you may stop believing. Either way, you surrender your internal compass. Her warning was gentle but firm: build that compass early. Decide who you are before the world tries to tell you. That's not easy advice to follow. Identity is fragile when you're young, and ambition amplifies that fragility. You want to matter. You want proof that you're on the right track. But she knew that the most important proof is invisible at first, the ability to keep going when no one is watching. She didn't glorify genius. She emphasized effort. She didn't talk about destiny. She talked about showing up. Again and again. Especially when it's boring. Especially when it's exhausting. That's the part people don't like to hear. We prefer stories of sudden breakthroughs and overnight success. But she lived in the reality between those moments, the years where nothing seems to move, yet everything is quietly forming. Her advice carried another warning hidden inside it. Don't let bitterness take root when life feels unfair. Bitterness is seductive. It feels like clarity. It feels like intelligence. But it corrodes the very resilience you need to survive long journeys. She knew that resentment drains energy faster than failure ever could, so she spoke about gratitude, not as positivity, but as survival. Gratitude keeps your perspective wide enough to breathe when pressure closes in. It reminds you that difficulty is not the whole story. She also warned about arrogance disguised as confidence. True confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to dominate rooms or dismiss others. It's quiet. It's stable. It listens. Arrogance, on the other hand, is fear in expensive clothing. It's the fear of being exposed, of being ordinary, of not being enough. She had no patience for that. Not because she judged it, but because she knew it leads to isolation. Her advice was relational as much as it was personal. She understood that no one builds anything meaningful alone, no matter how independent they appear. Bridges matter. Kindness matters. Reputation matters, not the performative kind, but the kind built through consistency. She warned against burning bridges in moments of ego or exhaustion. The world is smaller than it seems, and your character travels faster than your achievements. That's not a threat. It's a reminder. She also spoke about money in a way that stripped it of myth. Money is a tool, not a measure. Chasing it as proof of worth leaves you perpetually hungry. Using it as a resource frees you to think long-term. Her warning here was subtle but sharp. Don't let financial fear shrink your vision, but don't let financial success inflate your ego. Balance is harder than extremes. Anyone can be reckless. Anyone can be overly cautious. Living in the middle, where courage meets responsibility, takes wisdom. She also understood timing. Not everything that feels urgent is important. Not everything that's important will feel urgent. That's a dangerous confusion in modern life, where noise masquerades as necessity. Her advice was to slow down just enough to think clearly. Panic is expensive. It costs you judgment, relationships, and sometimes years of your life. She didn't teach fearlessness. She taught discernment. Fear can be a signal, not a stop sign. Learn the difference, she implied. Perhaps the most profound warning wrapped in her advice was this: don't let success disconnect you from humanity. Ambition can narrow your field of vision. It can turn people into obstacles or tools. She resisted that mindset fiercely. Success that costs your empathy is too expensive. She modeled humility not as self-deprecation, but as groundedness. Knowing where you came from keeps you steady when the world starts calling your name. And then there was her quiet insistence on resilience without drama. She didn't encourage complaining. Not because pain isn't real, but because dwelling on it doesn't build strength. There's dignity in endurance. There's power in composure. She lived that truth, and her advice reflected it. She warned against comparing timelines. Someone else's chapter 10 tells you nothing about your chapter 2. Comparison breeds impatience, and impatience leads to shortcuts that compromise integrity. Integrity, to her, wasn't negotiable. It was the foundation everything else rested on. Lose that, and no amount of success will stabilize you. Her advice also carried an invitation: take responsibility for your inner life. External chaos is unavoidable. Internal chaos is optional. Learning to manage your thoughts, emotions, and reactions is one of the most underrated skills in the world. She didn't call it mindfulness or emotional intelligence. She lived it. She practiced restraint. She chose her responses. That, more than any achievement, is a form of mastery. She warned that the world will try to rush you into versions of yourself that are convenient for others. Resist that. Growth takes time. Becoming yourself is not a race. She understood the danger of labels. Genius. Failure. Visionary. None of them are permanent. Clinging to labels limits evolution. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to grow out of old identities. That flexibility is strength, not weakness. Her advice also spoke to endurance through loneliness. Not all loneliness is a problem to solve. Some of it is a season to survive. When you're doing something unconventional, companionship may lag behind clarity. She warned not to fill that loneliness with distractions that dull your focus. Silence has something to teach you if you let it. She didn't frame life as a battle to win. She framed it as a responsibility to carry well. That shift changes everything. Winning is episodic. Responsibility is constant. And finally, perhaps the deepest warning of all, don't outsource your sense of meaning. No achievement, relationship, or recognition can give your life meaning if you haven't decided what matters to you. Meaning is constructed through values lived consistently, not milestones reached occasionally. Her advice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was rooted in lived experience, not theory. That's why it endures. If you listen closely, you can hear the warning still echoing beneath the advice. Life will test you, not to break you, but to reveal you. Pay attention to who you're becoming while you chase what you want. Because in the end, the most important thing you build is not a company, a legacy, or a reputation. It's the person who can live with the outcome, whatever it turns out to be, without losing themselves along the way. That was the warning. And that was the gift hidden inside it. And even after all that, there was still more hidden between her words, more meaning that only reveals itself when life begins to press harder. She understood that pressure doesn't just test your skills, it exposes your values. When everything is going well, anyone can appear principled. It's when things fall apart that you discover what truly guides you. Her advice carried a quiet alert: decide your values before circumstances force the decision for you, because when survival mode takes over, you don't rise to your ideals, you fall to your habits. She knew how easily people justify small compromises. Just this once. Just until things improve. Just to get through the door. But those small compromises accumulate. They reshape you slowly, invisibly, until one day you look back and wonder when you drifted so far from who you meant to be. Her warning wasn't harsh. It was realistic. She had seen how life corners people, how fear whispers reasonable excuses. And she knew that character isn't destroyed in dramatic moments, it erodes in quiet ones. She also warned against impatience masquerading as ambition. Wanting more isn't wrong. Wanting it faster at the cost of depth is dangerous. Speed can impress, but depth sustains. What grows too fast often can't hold its own weight. She believed in learning things properly. From the ground up. Not skipping steps. Not pretending to know what you don't. Humility, to her, wasn't about shrinking yourself, it was about respecting the process. She knew the world rewards confidence, but she also knew it punishes ignorance disguised as certainty. Her advice encouraged curiosity over arrogance, listening over proving. There was also an unspoken message about suffering without making it your identity. Hardship can either refine you or define you, depending on how tightly you hold it. She didn't deny pain, but she didn't center life around it either. She warned against wearing wounds like credentials. Pain doesn't make you special. What you do with it does. That distinction matters. Because some people get stuck in survival long after the danger has passed. They remain guarded, defensive, always bracing for impact. Her advice gently nudged toward healing, even if healing felt unfamiliar. She understood that strength isn't always visible. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like walking away from something impressive but misaligned. Walking away is especially hard. We're taught that quitting is failure. But she knew better. Staying in the wrong place out of pride is far more damaging than leaving with clarity. Her warning here was subtle: ensure you know the difference between perseverance and self-betrayal. She also spoke through example about adaptability. Life doesn't reward rigidity for long. The ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is more valuable than raw intelligence. She had lived through changing circumstances, and she understood that flexibility is a form of intelligence. She warned against nostalgia as a trap. The past can teach, but it can also seduce. Longing for what was can blind you to what's possible. Progress requires presence. There was also wisdom in how she viewed fear. She didn't treat it as an enemy to destroy, but as information to interpret. Fear points to importance. It highlights stakes. Ignoring it is reckless. Obeying it blindly is limiting. Her advice was to stand beside fear, not beneath it. She understood emotional regulation long before it became a popular concept. Reactivity creates chaos. Calm creates options. Her warning was clear in action if not in words. Protect your clarity, especially when emotions run high, because decisions made in emotional storms often create long-term consequences. She also understood the danger of being impressive instead of being effective. Impressiveness fades. Effectiveness compounds. Quiet consistency outperforms dramatic effort over time. Her advice nudged toward mastery, not performance. There was something deeply grounding in how she viewed success. She didn't frame it as domination or escape. She framed it as contribution. What are you adding? Who benefits from your work? Who is steadier because you exist? That orientation changes ambition from hunger to purpose. She warned against isolation disguised as independence. Needing no one is not strength, it's armor. And armor gets heavy. Allowing support doesn't make you weak. It makes you sustainable. She also understood that people grow at different speeds. Pushing others to match your pace creates fractures. Patience with others is as important as patience with yourself. Her advice carried empathy without indulgence. Compassion without enabling. That balance is rare. She also warned about ego after success. Success doesn't make you smarter, it makes you louder. If you're not careful, you stop listening. And when listening stops, learning stops. She reminded, through tone and example, that curiosity must outlive achievement. Another quiet warning lived in her respect for ordinary work. Not every meaningful contribution looks extraordinary. Showing up consistently for unglamorous tasks builds a life of substance. She didn't worship hustle. She respected effort paired with intention. Exhaustion is not a badge of honor if it's fueled by avoidance or insecurity. She warned against tying your worth to productivity. You are more than what you produce. That message alone could save people years of burnout. She also understood generational perspective. What feels permanent is often temporary. What feels overwhelming is often a chapter, not the book. Her advice encouraged zooming out just enough to breathe. Perspective is a form of relief. She warned against romanticizing chaos. Turbulence is not proof of importance. Peace is not proof of mediocrity. A stable life can still be meaningful, impactful, and bold. She understood that inner peace is not the absence of challenge, it's the presence of alignment, and perhaps one of the most human warnings she offered was this: don't harden yourself to survive. Life can make you sharp, defensive, suspicious. Those adaptations help in crisis, but they damage intimacy. She warned, quietly, to soften again when it's safe. To remain human even when life demands strength. Because strength without softness becomes loneliness, she also modeled long-term thinking. Not just in career, but in relationships, health, and self-respect. Short-term wins that cost long-term well-being are not wins. Her advice consistently pointed toward sustainability. Can you live this way for years? Can you sleep at night with these choices? Can you respect yourself tomorrow? Those questions matter more than applause. She warned against chasing extraordinary lives at the expense of ordinary joy. Moments of peace, laughter, connection, these are not distractions from success. They are evidence of a life actually being lived. She knew that regret rarely comes from trying and failing. It comes from neglecting what mattered while chasing what impressed. Her message, layered and patient, kept circling back to one truth: your life is shaped less by what happens to you and more by how you respond over time. No single moment defines you. Patterns do, and if you listen closely, beneath all the advice, beneath all the warnings, there is a steady reassurance. You don't have to become someone else to build something meaningful. You just have to become more fully yourself, honest, disciplined, grounded, and awake. That is not easy work, but it is enduring work, and that, perhaps, is the deepest wisdom wrapped inside her words, a reminder that the goal is not to escape life's difficulty, but to grow a self capable of carrying it with grace. And as everything settles, as the noise fades and the urgency loosens its grip, what remains is the quiet center of her message, the part that doesn't chase attention, the part that waits for you to be ready. She understood that life doesn't unfold in straight lines. It bends, loops, pauses, and surprises you. Plans matter, but adaptability matters more. Her advice held a final caution: don't confuse control with stability. You can't control outcomes, but you can stabilize your response. That difference is everything. When things don't go as expected, and they often won't, you're tempted to tighten your grip, to force clarity, to demand certainty. But she knew that clarity often arrives after movement, not before. You walk first. Understanding follows. She warned against waiting for perfect confidence. Confidence grows through action, not contemplation. If you wait until you feel ready, you may wait forever. Readiness is a result, not a prerequisite. At the same time, she cautioned against reckless leaps fueled by ego. Courage without reflection is just impulse. Wisdom lives in the pause between thought and action. That pause was something she honored deeply. She also knew that success amplifies who you already are. If you're grounded, success expands your generosity. If you're insecure, it magnifies your fear. Her warning here was gentle but firm. work on yourself before the world hands you leverage. Because leverage without maturity creates damage, often quietly, often unintentionally. She understood how easy it is to mistake intensity for importance. Not everything urgent deserves your energy. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Spend it deliberately. She warned against becoming reactive to every opinion, every trend, every critique. A life shaped by reaction is not a life led with intention. Her advice encouraged stillness, not withdrawal, but clarity. Stillness helps you hear what matters beneath the noise of expectation. She also spoke through example about dignity. Dignity in struggle. Dignity in success. Dignity in disagreement. You don't need to diminish others to assert yourself. You don't need to perform superiority to feel secure. Dignity is quiet confidence rooted in self-respect. She warned about the subtle loneliness that comes from constant self-protection. Guarding yourself from disappointment can also guard you from connection. Risk is the price of intimacy, and isolation is the cost of avoiding it. She believed connection was worth the risk. She also understood the difference between being driven and being consumed. Drive has direction. Consumption has compulsion. One builds. The other devours. Her advice nudged toward balance, not as a static state, but as a continual adjustment. You don't find balance once. You practice it daily. She warned against glamorizing extremes. Extremes look impressive but are rarely sustainable. Longevity belongs to those who pace themselves. There was also a deep respect in her words for learning from failure without living inside it. Failure is feedback, not a verdict. Extract the lesson, then move forward. Don't carry shame longer than necessary. Shame is heavy. Growth requires mobility. She also cautioned against outsourcing responsibility for your happiness. No person, career, or achievement can hold that weight without breaking. Happiness is cultivated internally and shared externally, not the other way around. She understood that self-respect is built through alignment. When your actions match your values, peace follows. When they don't, no amount of success can quiet the unrest. Her advice consistently returned to alignment as the compass. She warned about distraction as the modern form of avoidance. Staying busy can feel productive while keeping you from facing what truly matters. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it's where honesty lives. She encouraged making space for that honesty. She also recognized that life seasons change. What worked once may not work forever. Clinging to old strategies out of loyalty or fear can stall growth. Adaptation is not betrayal of your past, it's respect for your present. She warned against mistaking familiarity for safety, and then there was her final, almost whispered message: be kind to yourself. Not indulgent. Not avoidant. Kind. Life will challenge you enough. You don't need to become your own harshest critic. Self-compassion doesn't weaken discipline, it sustains it. She knew that people who last are not the ones who punish themselves into success, but the ones who learn how to recover, reflect, and continue. She also warned against defining your life by single moments, wins or losses. Life is a mosaic, not a snapshot. One mistake doesn't ruin you. One success doesn't complete you. What matters is the direction, not the drama. Her advice closed the circle it began. Trust the long arc. Do the work. Stay grounded. Remain human, and if there is one final warning wrapped inside all of it, it is this: don't lose yourself while trying to become someone impressive. Impressive fades. Integrity remains. Applause quiets. Character echoes. The world will change. Circumstances will shift. Roles will evolve. But if you have built a self anchored in responsibility, humility, curiosity, and compassion, you will not be uprooted by change. That is the kind of security no market, no title, no recognition can provide. Her message was never about raising someone extraordinary at the cost of being whole. It was about raising someone capable of enduring, adapting, contributing, and staying connected to what matters. And that is why her words endure. They don't promise ease. They promise steadiness. They don't guarantee success. They prepare you for whatever success brings, and in a world obsessed with outcomes, that preparation is the most loving warning of all.